always want to go to like some weird hole in the wall that has like -4 Yelp reviews. You're like, oh, nobody in the world likes this place. That's where I want to go.
Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown. I am Kevin Lieber. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor. And our episode this week is a very special one. We are celebrating our 1-year anniversary. We are celebrating 1 million views. So we are opening up questions to all of you. This is something that we normally keep for patrons only. At the end of every episode, we answer our patrons' questions. But this episode is going to be all you, all questions, the entire time.
The after show is a lot of interaction. People ask us things that are sometimes professional, sometimes personal. We get to all of them, and we love it. Like that's like the highlight of every show to me, is having that interaction. We thought, let's bring that to everybody to celebrate the 1 year. Get people who are not currently patrons, can't become patrons, whatever it is, give them a shot to throw the questions in. And wow, did we get a lot of them, and they're good too. So we're going to get to as many of these as possible. But this is what we wanted to give too, an explanation of what it's like when you're a patron. We have this stuff at the after show, and then there's a little bit of live streaming, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a live stream that we're doing, once a month. If you want to catch the live stream that we just recorded, there is an archive link for you over at Patreon. You have to become a patron for that though. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown. And the live stream is an interactive experience, so that we're all like really hanging out together, but even this kind of more passive interaction is really cool for us. And that's why when Matt and I were talking about this week's episode, we thought to celebrate the 1 year anniversary and the 1 million views, let's just really kind of open it up to everyone and bring everybody in and answer as many questions of yours as we can. There are a lot, but we're going to try our best to hit as many as possible.
You ready to roll?
Yeah. Fire away.
All right. Let's do it. The first one comes from 1 star on Discord. And the question is for you, Kevin. What is love?
Well, oh, man. I can't help but think of that song. Who sang that song? Like Hadaway or something. So
I just remember the Night at the Roxbury aspect of it.
Yeah. Total one-hit wonder. What is love?
Yeah.
That I don't think that we have enough time for that. Maybe we'll have to bring in like Dr. Ruth or some sort of love expert onto the show.
If I had to put it on a bumper sticker, I'd say something like, when you're with somebody and absolutely nothing else registers, nothing else is on your radar. I mean, the world doesn't exist outside of you and that person. That's what it feels like to me.
That's pretty good. I don't think I could top that.
That's best I could do in one sentence.
Yeah. I like it. We'll go with that.
Isaac Teal, who is a Baby Gang member with Baby Scoop Magoop. Isaac, this is really interesting. He asked, do you sleep in first person or third person? If both, what type of dream do you dream in first or third person? So like, I'd never thought about dreaming that way.
Yeah, I believe dreamt in first person. It's always me who is in the dream. And I'm going to be honest, I rarely remember my dreams. Like very rarely. I know a lot of people, my wife, I know my sister just seem to wake up and remember like 4 dreams that they had, which to me sounds really exhausting, because whenever I do wake up having remembered the dream that I just went through, it takes me a while to kind of recover from that, because it feels like, I know Mitch Hedberg always had this joke. Gosh, I'm going to butcher it, but it was something along the lines of, fixing he just spent all night fixing his lawnmower with his landlord or something like that.
So that's what your dreams are, is fixing machinery.
For me, I don't know. I always seem like, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but there are sometimes when I'm falling asleep where I start dreaming while I'm still awake. And I can actually like see and hear things, but I'm not sleeping yet. And that's really weird, just to be kind of an observer of my own thoughts and notice kind of how random they are. So
it's a little cry for help to the doctor to adjust your meds.
It's probably some sort of mental disorder.
So the next one is from Jeff, also in the Discord, Baby Gang. Number one, he was actually the very first patron for the Create Unknown. Jeff was. And that's something we will never forget. This is a quickie. Favorite movie as a child and favorite movie now.
Oh, as a child, that's easy. That was The Goonies. I must have watched The Goonies a countless number of times. Now, I would say it depends. I mean, the movie I've probably watched the most as an adult would be The Big Lebowski, I think. I've seen that movie a lot of times. Yeah. Yeah. What about you?
Mine's really easy. Favorite movie as a child, probably Rocky IV, which that came out in 86. So it was prime time for me, just as I was getting to understand the world. I had that movie to guide me. It's been tremendously useful.
That's how you started training in Siberia to defeat Ivan Drago.
Favorite movie now is still Over the Top. There's really no better story than having to arm wrestle for custody of your child, and get a truck and get an 18-wheeler.
Both Stallone movies.
But both about the same time. I mean, 86 on Rocky IV, and I think Over the Top was 87. But it actually had a really weird impact, Over the Top did, because the arm wrestling tournament was in Las Vegas and held downtown, too. Not on the Strip, but on the old, what we call now, like Old Vegas. I thought it was the coolest looking place in the world when I saw that movie, and it always stuck with me. And I thought, I want to go there when I can. And so I started going there. It's had a tremendous impact on, kind of how my life has played out. And then, I met Maura there as well. And so now I'm in Vegas quite a bit. But yeah, it all started with arm wrestling and Over the Top. So I love that movie.
Yeah, I want to make it perfectly clear before we move on that this is a movie about Sylvester Stallone arm wrestling, like entering an arm wrestling competition to, now correct me if I'm wrong, you're the expert here, to not only win custody of his son, but to also win back his truck.
The truck is the grand prize of the tournament because at that time, so many arm wrestlers are truckers at that point. Yeah. But the wife has died. They've been separated for a long time. And so the wife's father is like this extremely wealthy kind of land baron overlord type, and he wants to take custody of the son, and Sylvester Stallone needs to prove that he's like a fit parent. And the way to do this is to just crush arms.
Is to go like this. The way to prove you're a good dad is to go like this.
So we spent way too much time on this question.
That'll happen.
This one's good. Minecraft Skull on Discord, excuse me, asks, what's your favorite flavor of bean?
Of bean?
That's right, of bean.
I suppose coffee bean would be.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good coffee. Bad coffee is pretty bad, but man, good coffee is delicious. And I'd say a runner up to the coffee bean is refried beans. I was going to say
baked. I was going to say baked. Like any kind of baked bean is good.
Baked bean is solidly third place for me.
Oh,
yeah.
No.
I'd go coffee.
If we keep coffee's good. I didn't even think about that. But what about vanilla bean? That's not bad, is it?
The flavor of vanilla, I really like. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a bean rundown. We should have a full bean episode at one point. So Blasteroid also in the Discord, and he was just recently in New York. He had a nice vacation there and then went back to the UK. It was cool to hear about about the ins and outs of a week in New York City. He says, what are your favorite bands and artists? How about you list 3?
Favorite bands. Gojira is probably number 1. I love Gojira. All-time band would be Nirvana. I don't listen to them that much anymore because I've listened to them like nonstop when I was a teenager. And a third one would be the Tool. I love the new Tool album. I love Fear Inoculum. I've been listening to that pretty much on replay in the car since it came out.
I'm going to go Kenny Rogers, Leonard Skinner, and then there's everybody else, really. Creedence Clearwater Revival is my Nirvana, where, I listened to everything. I had every single record. I just wore the vinyl down on those. I've heard every song 7 million times at this point. So I don't listen to them a whole lot anymore because it's like etched in my brain. But yeah, they're the all-time on that. So Conrad has 2 questions that go together. Who's your favorite Discord user? This is Conrad 500 on Discord, so he's around a lot. So who's your favorite Discord user? And his follow-up question is, why is Conrad 500 your favorite Discord user?
Well, because
I actually have an answer to this.
The first 499 Conrads, just weren't up to snuff. And it was the 500th Conrad that really tipped it over the edge in his favor for me.
I actually have a favorite Discord user, and it's non-controversial too, because if we picking favorites is going to go badly, but at the same time, how can we not have a deep love for Ben W? Because he makes everything work. He handles everything. I mean, he set up the Discord for us. He just really puts everything together that we need. That's community related, and that's amazing. I mean, having somebody like that as a resource is so shockingly valuable that it's even tough to detail. And so without him, there really is no Discord anyway. So I think
that's fair.
That gets somebody the favorite tag, doesn't it?
Well, especially when we're such boomers that we wouldn't been able to do this without him. So thank you very much to Ben.
We would have set up like a list serve.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one really quick from Conrad. If you could live or have any living famous celebrity on TCU or just to interview, who would you want?
I believe I've said this before. Maybe it was in a patron only part of the show, but it's Shaq. I really want to meet Shaq.
Oh, right.
Like I 100% like genuinely want to hang out and talk to Shaq. I find him absolutely fascinating and endearing, and I think that people would probably assume that I would say, somebody like Elon Musk, maybe.
Yeah.
But I would be really intimidated, I think, by somebody like that. Whereas somebody like Shaq, I don't think I'd be intimidated. I think I would just have fun with that guy. He just seems like somebody who's just interested in having a good time and is not uptight and is really laid back and chill and just seems to be a joyful person in a way that I want to be around, if that makes sense. That's
seems right based on what we see and what we know about him. I think it would be much more relaxed and it would be cool to hang out. I don't have an answer on this. I've thought about it. I honestly enjoy talking to pretty much everybody, and that makes it hard to do something like this because it doesn't matter if they're a celebrity or not. We talk about YouTube people like this, and we know some of the people we like the most and are biggest fans of have, like 7 subscribers. And I would be just as thrilled talking to them as I would to, talking to Mr. Beast. I don't care about the celebrity aspect. I've had a lot of really useless conversations with famous people in my life. I've had a lot of amazing, just incredible conversations with like random ding dongs at a bar. So, like So how am I supposed to make a decision? I don't know how it's going to play out. So
also, like, without naming names, there are definitely plenty of really successful people that you don't want to hang out with at all.
No,
that are not fun to hang out with, that are not just relaxed or like socially enjoyable to be around, without a doubt. And I think that plays into sometimes why they're successful. You know, maybe they have ramped up some element of their personality that makes them really successful in some arena. And there's like a massive deficiency or drop off in other elements of their personality that doesn't lend itself to you really wanting to sit down over a nice cup of coffee and just chat with them.
You know, I wish we could do an episode on like worst famous people encounters, but that's exactly the sort of thing that comes back to bite you in 6 or 7 years when somebody dredges up this old episode. But yeah, so the next one is, and we've talked about this a lot, so you can say, you know, like a line about it. Al3891 in Discord, also a patron. How did we meet and how did we start working together? We've talked about that at some length in the past, but do you remember something from the really, really early days?
Well, just to recap, for if we have answered this in the patron only section through the wormhole and not on an episode, you know, Matt and I did go to school together. We went to middle school and high school together, not in the same grade. Matt was a year ahead of me. And then we really became close friends kind of after college when we were both working online and trying to figure out how to make careers out of kind of online work.
We must have been like 24, 25 then.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds right.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so
that's, we knew who each other was for like 15 years before that, but never talked until after college.
Yeah, because you know, high school you get so fractured into your little cliques and stuff like that. And sometimes even the grade barrier, you can cross the grade barrier if you're on a sports team with somebody, you know, maybe they're ahead of you, but you're both on the baseball team, or you're both in band, or you're both in choir, or whatever it is. But sometimes, you know, you and I weren't going to mix no matter what in high school.
We did different stuff. We did completely different things and had totally different interests.
Yeah.
You know, and still really do. like for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, look at the answers to the music stuff. You know, I'm popping on a smooth Kenny Rogers playlist and you're doing whatever a Gojira does. You know?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. But
yeah,
also,
there's a lot of going back that far. There's so much, you know, now it's been like 25 years.
I know, but what I was going to say is I think that those differences, you and I are both open to ideas and both really open to like exploring the best solution for ideas. And I think that is where you and I connect, and that connection is so strong that the other stuff is whatever. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a detail.
Yeah. You go watch the movies you like and listen to the bands you like and honestly do the hobbies that you like, which you're much more of an extrovert than I am. Like, I would much rather stay home and be an introvert and play video games and read my book or whatever. and all of that still works out because we can come together over like the mutual kind of obsession with the exploration of ideas.
Our approach to things is really similar. Like, we understand the way we both approach things. Everything else is pretty different. And that's cool. But when you match up on the approach, then then it's just really easy to work together. It's easy to get along. You know, we haven't had like a substantial disagreement about anything like involving us. Like, I think we've split on some things that had outside factors, but had never at any point did it have anything to do with us. So like, So like we always pretty much figure out a solution on things and just plain go forward on stuff and do things without really any trouble.
No, but I also think that the differences in personality help when it comes to figuring things out. Like if you and I both had the same interests and perspective on everything, then then you might as well just argue with yourself. It's not even helpful to bounce ideas off of somebody else if they're just going to reflect and hit you back in the face. Like you need to be bouncing ideas off of somebody who actually has ideas that are different than yours, even if that causes that like cognitive dissonance where you're like, wait a minute, like this person's an idiot. It's like, well, maybe they are, but hey, maybe you are. And that's kind of like the tension that needs to exist, I think, for like a strong working relationship.
Yeah, we've talked about that with content where, I go back to the Zorba video where there was this section that I thought was awesome and interesting. And you were like, you know what, this is boring and dumb. If we'd said the same thing, that would have gone in the video and it would have been boring and dumb. We have to have that difference on perspectives to get a better product. And without that, sometimes it works the other way where, you say, oh, we should focus more on this and that. I'm like, oh, but that's really not interesting because of X, Y, and Z. So you have to have that massive difference and then be, not take it personally when stuff gets caught and obliterated. You just realize like, hey, yes, this is interesting to me and like 1% of people, but it might be better to do something that's interesting for, 90% of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the remaining 9%, those people just hate everything. So it doesn't matter. Blastroid, as I'm finding another question, Blastroid has one that's got to be for you. Honey, where are my pants?
They are on the bathroom floor where you left them, and you better do that laundry like I asked you to.
Given that Blastroid is in the United Kingdom, pants means underwear there.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
I'm just assuming that he meant the UK version of pants. But you never actually know. Oh, speaking of Eagle brand sardines, Memth02 in Discord, how is our favorite sponsor Eagle brand sardines doing? And have you run out of their patches yet? We have actually on the patches, we have reached capacity on patches. I actually have taken a look at what it would cost to make more. It's possible. I can't commit to doing that right now, but we could recreate Eagle brand sardine patches to get more. And I don't think the company at this point would give us a hassle on it.
I don't think
it's always dicey. Yeah, it's always dicey to deal in intellectual property like that, but I feel fairly safe on that one. But yeah, it's a good patch, and I don't want us to run out when there's so many sardines left to slurp in this world.
Ugh, slurp.
So another YouTube related question, Corey Brandt, he commented right on YouTube and often does on the videos. This is a really interesting operational question. Why do you think the views sharply declined after the release of season 3? And I think that's something that we should address. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, some part of that is the format changed. I mean, when we first and our idea of what the show is changed, a lot of things really kind of changed pretty dramatically. At its core, what we wanted to do differently in season 3 is focus more on the audience and us and the show itself, and still do interviews, but have that not be the standalone element of the show like it was before. When we first started the Create Unknown, it was just for the interviews, and we released them every other week, and it was a deep dive into who these creators are and where they came from. And over time, we kind of just realized that you and I didn't get to discuss things that we've have on our minds and things that you and I question and want to talk about as it relates to YouTube and having a career in a creative sector.
Yep.
And while we still will do the interviews, we did a few already in season 3, and we have more on the docket. Like I said, we have about a dozen creators who are already firmly committed to being on the show. So that will happen. We also wanted to put out episodes every single week. We worked on and launched the Patreon so that there was a mechanism for us to mail things to our fans on there. And also just give us the opportunity to talk about things like what it's like to develop merch, or what's, going on with the trending tab, or whatever it may be.
There's algorithm stuff at play too, which I know people get bored talking about, the algorithm and whatever, but it really makes a difference here with the format that we've got. Number one, things are good in podcast land. We don't have, we didn't have any decline like that on the podcast side, iTunes and whatever. That's awesome. But you've got to think about how YouTube sees a video like what we do. It's very long. Okay. So an hour, let's say, if not more, and most of them are a bit over an hour. Very few people can see that pop up in their feed and say, why, yes, I have the time and interest right now to dedicate 90 minutes to this at this moment in time. No, nobody does that. That's really uncommon. So they'll slide by. Perfectly normal. I do this with podcasts myself. When I have time and I'm in the mood for a certain type of podcast, then I'll do it. But I never get a notification and I'm like, boom, I'm there. So click-through rates are by default going to be much lower on something like what we do. Okay. And that the retention on watch time as well is going to be low because you get interrupted. You're, again, maybe not in the mood for the whole thing, or you come back to it, or whatever it is. But on something that long, let's say it's 90 minutes, you watch 9 minutes of it, 15 minutes of it, 20 minutes. That's pretty good, spending 20 minutes on content. But the percentage on retention for YouTube's purposes is very low compared to like a Vsauce 2 video where most people are watching the majority of it. Because it's only 10 minutes long. Like, you're going to watch that whole thing. So all of these elements that YouTube values to serve content, it's perfectly sensible for those not to fit on like a long form podcast. And so over time, the site just doesn't serve this up straight away because so few people are jumping on it. We're totally comfortable with that. That's the way it works on this platform and with this type of content that we're putting on this platform. It's just kind of the way it is. And it's important to recognize that. Some changes on the community tab and what that does to drive traffic. That was a big deal. Just all sorts of factors go into us never knowing whether very few people are going to see this on YouTube or whether many people are going to. And so we take what we can get on it and just deal with it and move on. But the important thing is making content that we think is good and interacting with the community. And like Kevin explained, we really wanted to make a switch where we were interacting with people a lot more. And that has been a massive, massive success, whether it's on the Discord, whether it's in comments, stuff like that. We feel great about that. And that's the real value on how this has played out. So
because the way that
good question.
The way that it was before was essentially like we were a mechanism for fans of other creators to hear from that creator, whether it was iDubbbz or it was Casey Neistat, or it was Quackity or Carson. Quackity or Carson's fans would come to the Create Unknown to hear from Quackity or Carson, and then they would not come back for the Create Unknown because we were just a vehicle for them to hear from their people that they love. And why?
And that's cool.
And that's great. Yeah. Because that was part of the initial conceit of the show was to take these creators seriously in a way that they aren't by anybody else. And we still are doing that, and we still believe in that element of the show, but we also wanted to just bolster the element of the show of being able to talk directly with you and have the show also be its own community, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. So that was a really good question. And I'm glad we got an opportunity to explain how that works and why we're cool with it. Yeah. Little P Gamer on Discord asks, what happened to the Vsauce channel, and will there be a Vsauce 2 YouTube original?
Well, at the end of the day, whenever I get a question that's like, what happened to X? It's like, well, I can't continue to do every idea I've ever had for the rest of my life if I ever want to do new ideas. So, Vsauce went away because that was largely a place for me to put your BDP. I mean, I don't know how much in the weeds we want to get on this, but basically BDP was a show where I showcase artists, and then I created ancillary content to that called Your BDP, where I was showing off the Vsauce community creativity in their projects, and I would upload that to Vsauce. But, BDP went away because I had other ideas that I wanted to do. I think first was Thought Glass I started doing instead of BDP, and then I started doing those deep dive episodes, the human experience, invention of series instead of Thought Glass. And it's just a progression of being on the platform for so long that, eventually you do as many of the idea as you had until it's sort of run its course and it's lived its life. And then you start something new. So that's sort of what happened to that. What was the other question?
Will there be a Vsauce 2 YouTube original? And, you never know on that kind of thing, but I will say that we've developed 3 or 4 pretty good ideas over the last 6 months, and we're pushing those out to different people and places. And that process takes such a long time, like development takes forever, that you can almost never say anything real about the progress of it all. But we have several good ideas that are being thrown out there. And, that's a big part of the trips that I've been taking and that we have coming up in future months is exactly this sort of thing. So episodes on YouTube, videos on YouTube are awesome. But we've thought on a more cohesive level, where sometimes there are like 6 concepts that need to go together and they're not going to fit in a 15-minute video. It's not going to work that way. And I mean, Kevin's put a bunch of these together, and we're talking to people. So
it's
we'll
also
see what happens,
also just fun to do different projects. Like I see comments sometimes about, like, disparaging comments, I would say. Like, I understand both sides of the argument, but I would say that not a lot of people speak up for the creators who just want to do new projects. It's like, it's fun to be able to work with a production crew. It's exciting.
Different experience.
It's totally different. It's totally different than doing, So as somebody who's made like literally hundreds and hundreds of YouTube videos, to walk onto a production set and have somebody whose job it is just to make sure you have your like face isn't too shiny is really cool and really different and really exciting and novel. And it makes new connections in your brain having these new experiences like that. So I understand sometimes the audience gets bummed out. It's like, oh, you're just doing like kind of old media sort of thing. But there's a reason that stuff exists. It can be a lot of fun.
You can do different things in that format. Just like you can do different things when you're extremely lean and you're like a guy with a GoPro strapped on his head. That's the other side of the pendulum swinging. And it's good to do both. You just plain stay fresh that way. Okay, real quick. Codie Cola, I want to... I have the black lung from coal mining as a child and chimney sweeping. I want to put a couple of these together because you've addressed it a little bit, and we can go a little further on. Codie Cola on YouTube asked, do you have more podcasts featuring YouTubers coming in the future, or are you running low on potential guests? We are so not running low.
We are so not running low. We are so behind. That's like one of the things I've been really disappointed and stressed out about when it comes to this podcast is I want to do way more interviews. We have a lot of people waiting for us to just find the time to chat with them. So the answer is no, we're not running low. We are, in fact, part of this switch to weekly episodes was to get more interviews done. So it wasn't just, two a month at most. We could do 3 in a month. We could do 4 in a month. It just depends on how many we record. And at this point, I'm just chomping at the bit to get some of these people on the show and chat with them.
Yeah, and it's purely been a logistics thing. Like, we've had crazy things pop up that are just that knock us down for a week, whether it's you or me. We couldn't really see those coming. And, you can't have like 8 interviews backlogged because by the time they do pop, some stuff is going to be irrelevant or stale. Like, there's got to be some current aspect. It doesn't have to be like 24 hours after you talk, but it can't be 6 months either. And so we have this, there's a shelf life is what I'm trying to say. It's like produce. Like, you don't have to eat it the day after you buy it, but you can't like put the onions in there and eat them 9 months later. So there's this balancing act between that and our schedules. And we just happen to just have stuff come up, like things where we're not around. You just went to LA for a week to do the minefield system stuff. I was in Ukraine, Armenia. I'm off next weekend for Australia. It's tough.
Prior to that, we were building a pasta chair in Rome.
In Italy, which we didn't, as you know from the episode, anybody who listened, we didn't know about in advance. Like, that's really what kicked off the whole thing, is that we had like 3 weeks completely disappear out of nowhere. And everything has been, kind of catch up and jammed in to make it work since then. So when something that significant pops up, and Armenia and Ukraine literally popped up with like a week's notice, didn't it? Mm-hmm. So we've had this really strange series of things we couldn't see coming that make it tough to record. But yeah, we have a bunch. JayradSingSing asks, when is reviewbrah getting on the show? We obviously can't commit to something like that, but I love him, man. I want to throw him on the ask list. Yeah. There's so many things that I would want to talk to him about. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't have a connection to reviewbrah, but I'm sure we could find one, and hopefully he's interested and amenable. And if that's the case, then we would love to have him on the show for sure. Yep. And I want to point out that Meat Roach, let's drop 1 or 2 if you can. Because Meat Roach asked specifically, what future interviews do you have planned? Are there a couple people who have said they want to talk that you're comfortable throwing out now, or do you want to keep it a secret? Sure. Well, we have Chad, a.k.a. Anything for Views. I mean, yeah, that was right on everybody Twitter, knows that because that was right on Twitter. That happened very publicly. And I'll also say Lord Bung, who just released his latest episode of Confinement, which I have a cameo in. So that's also why I'm comfortable talking about Lord Bung being a future guest, because I was literally in one of his, actually 2 episodes of Confinement as, well, you'll just have to watch. Just watch Confinement and listen for my voice. Yeah. But that's good. You're throwing out two very different people as well. Yeah, so that's cool. Yeah. So Chase, again from the Discord, what's your favorite moment in the Discord and on the show? I have a Discord moment for us. So if you can do the show one, I've got the Discord moment covered.
Oh man, I wish that I had thought about this ahead of time. I would say what sticks out most was actually in our first episode, the episode that we did with Destin from Smarter Every Day, where he started talking about like Little Debbie snack cake science.
Yeah, yeah.
That was so unexpected and so fascinating to me, and I still want to learn more about that. You know, How It's Made has always been one of my favorite shows. I love learning how things are made because you just never it's impossible to look at the finished product of anything, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube video or a doorknob, and really have the first iota of a hint of a clue, the amount of work that and effort that went into creating that. And that's what I love about How It's Made, is it's like, here's how tires are made, or here's how matchsticks are made. And it's always amazing and incredible. And just the amount of engineering that go into the machines that make these things. Anyway, snack cakes, again, is in the realm of things that I don't understand the science of, like how many sprinkles have to go on top of this like sprinkled cake, or how many lines of chocolate go specifically on a zebra cake in like what sort of like distanced intervals. I nerd out on stuff like that. And so that part with Destin cool stuck out. Yeah.
That was a really cool moment. And on the Discord side, we had the craziest thing happen. I want to say in June. It was right when we got the baby gang going. James, who's in Australia, he's in Brisbane. He's in the baby gang. So's a guy named Keaton, and Keaton, to make this very long, detailed story short, he'd just been in Australia for a month last year or something like that. Oh, yeah, I went through Brisbane. I stayed with a friend here. What neighborhood? Well, it turns out to be basically the neighborhood next to the one where James lives where James lives. And the guy who Keaton had stayed with, the friend he had there, was a mutual friend of James. And so we get this guy from the US and another one from Australia who don't know each other at all. And they slowly, very weirdly and creepily and awesomely realize that they have this serious in real life connection, and they're both like texting the mutual friend to, to confirm like, oh my God, is this real? That was really cool because the odds against that are overwhelming, absolutely overwhelming. But it showed what happens with a community like ours. That was so cool to see such a strange connection like that. Every place I've ever been, people will ask you things like, oh, you're from New York. Do you know whoever? And, you groan on the inside. They're like, yes, the 37 billion people in there. Of course, I know, Joseph. It just doesn't work that way ever. But in this case, yeah, it actually worked. I was watching it play out in real time. And I remember messaging you about it and just being like, you got to jump in the Discord and watch what's happening right now, because this is incredible and weird, and I love it. So that so far was absolutely my favorite Discord moment. Kevin, I'm going to throw one directly to you, so I can get a few in the queue. Isaac asked, "What's the most obscure game console accessory in your collection? What did it take for you to finally have it?"
Oh, I don't think I've talked about my video game collection at all on this show.
Not much. I haven't heard you.
Yeah. No. I don't know. But I do collect video games. I have for years. It's just a hobby that I have. And the hardest thing in the collection for me to find a good copy of was, there are these old tabletop arcade machines that came out in like 1983, I think, that Nintendo made. They have these really weird screens with like a mirror on top. Maybe we could find a picture or something to throw into the episode so you guys know what I'm talking about. But anyway, there was one for Mario's Cement Factory, of all things. I mean, this is before Super Mario Brothers, okay? And this is when
he was just coming from Donkey Kong, right?
Yeah, he was just kind of like, I think maybe the original Mario Brothers arcade game was out at this point, probably. But yeah, so they made this other thing called Mario's Cement Factory. And that was really tough to find. And what was interesting about that was it was one of those rare, like eBay storage wars kind of story where somebody didn't know what they have. It was dirt cheap. Nobody was paying attention. And I got this thing for like $6.
I remember you buying that and freaking out over it happening. Like you'd won the lottery.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that because then we were talking about you have a couple other of those little tabletop things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember you saying which ones you had. And like I have one that's not Nintendo, but it's like I think it's called Galaxy or something. But it's a very similar setup where it's a standalone. Like it's hard to even describe, to people. Like you can't relate it to anything now.
Not really. I know exactly what you're talking about. If you watch Angry Video Game Nerd, James Rolfe has a bunch of these.
Oh, in the background.
Yeah, he has a whole shelf of these like little tabletop arcade machines and the Mario Cement Factory. Well. Oh yeah. So I have all the Nintendo ones now. I have it. I think it's just Snoopy, Popeye, the Mario one, and then there's like a Donkey Kong one, and that was pretty much all they made. But yeah, that Mario one was like my Storage Wars moment where I found the thing for dirt cheap. I was very excited about it.
That's awesome. Maruko Arts on Discord asks, "What are your favorite dinosaurs? Do you have a favorite?"
I think that when I was a kid, I loved Triceratops.
Yeah?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I never liked dinosaurs as a kid. I was just never into them. But I liked the really tiny, like little velociraptors in Jurassic Park. The ones that are a foot tall. Mm-hmm. They're so fast. They can do so much damage. They look amazing. They're the coolest things in the world. And I love that they travel in packs too. You know, you got this whole like little horde of these tiny velociraptors. So it's those, and then like every other dinosaur.
Yeah. Well, the Vsauce premiere for System and the Minefield Halloween special was at the Natural History Museum in LA. So we're like literally hanging around a T-Rex. So that was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Memth02 again asks, serious question, Legos or Lego?
Oh, that's a great question because because it's changed because I got berated on Vsauce 2. I grew up saying Legos. That's what it was. It was Legos. That's like colloquially in, New York, we say Legos. But when I said Legos in a Vsauce 2 video, that was all I heard about on that video. I don't remember what it was. It was probably like a BDP episode where somebody built some crazy thing out of Lego. And ever since then, there are a few things that have happened that have changed the way I say things because of the audience on Vsauce 2. But yeah, they were
now
very
it's
adamant.
Hard Lego?
Yeah, I do not say Legos anymore. Ever since then, I just go Lego. They say that's the official way to say it. It's not Legos. It's Lego.
I'm glad we cleared that up.
Yes.
But I when I saw the question, I so distinctly remembered the Legos Lego debacle of like 2014. I remembered what a bizarre storm it was, and how
I hate when that
it was
stuff
like a
happens.
real thing for you.
I hate. Yeah. It makes me feel frustrated because it's like, and it still happens with the way I pronounce things, and that it's just I can't pronounce everything exactly how you pronounce it where you are in the world. It's just the nature of YouTube, where it's like, why is this guy saying herbs instead of herbs? And it's like, well, because where I'm from, we say herbs instead of herbs. There's no hard H in America. I'm not from the UK where you have the hard H herbs. Like, we just pronounce these things differently. I'm sorry.
Which even the letter itself, they're quite likely to say H instead of H. Another short one, Tommy on Discord. This is good. Is the band bowling for soup? Bowling to receive soup? Or are they bowling on behalf of soup?
That's
good.
That is good. I always assumed that they were bowling to achieve soap. Bowling for soap.
Bowling for soap.
Yeah, I always thought soup was the prize. And if you win the bowling tournament, instead of a trophy, you get a big bowl of soup.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, that also is much clearer for everybody who's been thinking about this for like 20 years now. That's about how long ago that band came out, right? 15 years?
Oh, man, I don't even really know. I think so.
It was never quite my thing, so I don't track bowling for soup that closely.
I don't even track soup that closely. Soup.
I track bowling. I actually track bowling very, very closely.
Yeah, you love bowling.
Yeah, so I know that. I can tell you who's making the cut to round 3 in the U.S. Open that's happening right now. But yeah, when we get to the soup part, no, I don't know anything about that.
Especially when there's like soup available in like a buffet style, like an open kind of area where it's like anybody can get some of the soup. Like, count me out. I'm out of that equation. I'm not, no matter how hungry I am, I'm not eating communal soup.
So vats of food are a turnoff to you?
Huge turnoff. But yeah, like in general they are, but soup in particular, because you just need like one piece of something nasty to get into that pot of soup, and it's everywhere.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
It's not a good mechanism it's a great mechanism for bacteria.
Yes. It's like a big test tube.
It is.
For illness.
Yeah.
Toji, who is also in Australia, she's in the Discord, has a pretty sensible one here. Did you ever doubt starting the Create Unknown during the production process? And how did you overcome any anxiety in starting it? Because we did have a very long startup phase, didn't we?
Yeah, I don't know if it was anxiety as much of just hoping that we were happy with it. I think whenever you start any project or a new job or you're going to a new school or whatever it is, yeah, there is that level of kind of nervous anticipation that it goes well, for sure. Mm-hmm. But I think that's just natural.
I think we had some doubts early on with whether it was going to happen because we needed a partner on it for a lot of reasons. We had to work with somebody on the production side, mainly because we didn't have the time or resources to do that part adequately. So we had to have a partner, and we tried to find one. We thought we were really close on a good partnership with them, and then it fell through like 2 feet from the finish line. And then it was a question of how do we want to proceed? Do we want to spend another 6 months sorting out details with somebody? Do we want to try to put it together ourselves? That was, I think we had some doubts in that process that was like over a year long. Because I know that distinctly, and I think somebody else asked this question, I'll refer to them when I see it again, but about how we got the idea in the first place, and I brought it to you in April of 2016, I think, maybe March, I don't know. And it took a really long time to sort out the partnerships and how it would fit for us. At a certain point, it was like, hey, this hasn't been working out for 12 months. We still haven't found a partner. Do we just do it and figure it out as we go along, or do we just move on to other things? There's a lot of anxiety on something like that, on whether you kill a project. It feels bad to think about the sunk cost of your time, everything you've put into it, and then moving on. There's a lot of anxiety there, and I think I think you just have to do what is best at that time and really internalize the fact that you did what was best regardless of what came before that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, there are a lot of like proverbs and sayings and stuff that are like that, like don't throw good money after bad. It's the same idea. Like when you commit to doing what you know is the right thing and the best thing, the anxiety goes away.
Yeah.
You don't know that you're making the best decision, but you recognize that you think you're making the best decision, and that has to be good enough.
Yeah. And it can be a balancing act between also just saying, I don't know how well this is going to turn out, but I just need to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. Propaganda Pirate on Discord. Favorite thing you've come across from the last year? And that's very general.
I know. I'm like, well, yeah. I've had some apple cider donuts recently that were pretty good. Yeah, I'm really happy with Michael and Jake's shows. Those turned out really well.
Yeah.
The pasta chair video was a total curveball that I never expected to do or to happen this year. That happened, that I'm really proud of and happy with. That was a great experience. You know, that question could really range.
Could go in a lot of ways.
Go in a lot of ways.
My favorite,
I don't know, man.
I think,
what do you think?
My favorite is not so much a specific thing, but a couple communities of people who I really like that are in the YouTube sphere. You know, one in particular. There's this just a Twitter chat of people who are mostly on YouTube. I'd say like 90% of them have channels, and some have really big channels and some don't. And I don't care. They're an awesome group of people that are extremely supportive, a lot of fun. They know a lot too. Like they have shocking amounts of knowledge, and it shows how powerful it is when you get a couple dozen people together who all have areas of expertise that are not your own, whether it's sound, editing, you know, just even a different perspective on things like the algorithm. You know, that's something I deal with, is optimization, but I might be wrong a lot of the time, you know, and it's important to hear other people. So yeah, these little kind of pockets of talent, Zalgaloo, who's in our Discord, and has a great channel. He introduced me to a couple of these communities, back in late spring, early summer kind of thing. That's made a tremendous difference in how I feel about the day. Like I just feel better about going through like days grinding on YouTube stuff, because I have more people to talk to about things. So thank you, Zalgaloo, for that.
That has been probably the most positive. Well, one of the most positive things for me from doing this podcast is just the friendships that we've made with these YouTubers has been so cool. Like just in the past year of doing this, I can't even think of the amount of YouTubers that I'm really close with now that I wasn't before, you know, and that was kind of like there was a hint of that before we started, like, hey, maybe this will like give us a reason to kind of talk with more YouTubers. It gives you an outlet for it. It kind of gives you an excuse to say, hey, you know, so-and-so, I'm a fan of your work. Do you want to like chat about it on this podcast? But there's so many more YouTubers that I'm friends with now that haven't been on the podcast, and hopefully they will be someday, but just being kind of more tapped into them, as well as, you know, the listeners of this show, has been life-altering in a really positive way.
Yeah. We talked about it in reference to VidCon, comparing VidCon 2019 to VidCon 2018, and socially, it was a radically different experience. It wasn't even being on the same planet, and a lot more so for me than for you, because, you know, people know you and you've been around such a long time. But yeah, I didn't ever have a reason to talk to iDubbbz. You know, I didn't ever have a reason to say hey to virtually anybody outside of Vsauce or like a handful of people who we've come across in the past. It was a completely different experience to be able to talk to some of the people we'd talked to on the show. You know, talking to Destin at EduCon was an amazing thing that wouldn't have happened in 2018. So yeah, it has changed everything. And something that I want to do an episode on in the future is how important it is to show up to stuff and talk to people. And the last year, and really everything surrounding the Create Unknown, which is ironic because it's a digital thing, has further reinforced how important all of that is. And I know it's hard for a lot of people. Number one, on logistics, it's really tough to get to events because you got to work and you got to usually find a way to get there and all of this stuff.
And it can be really expensive too.
Shockingly expensive in a lot of cases. But there are ways around that, and there are local things. There are always things nearby you that are going to work on a small scale, but you have to go there, you have to meet people, and that's hard. The networking, the talking, there's a lot of discomfort and anxiety around that stuff, even for people who like it and who are more extroverted. It's funny. We've talked about some of the same conversations and both had anxiety in different ways about being in the situation, even though, I'm on one side and you're on the other. So it's hard for everybody. But yeah, you've got to mix it up with people. You got to go places, talk to them, hang out with them, be normal, preferably. It does. And if you're not going to be normal, yeah, you've got to be memorably charming.
Yeah, nobody is normal, but it does make a big difference. It does kind of reinforce bonds in a way that is impossible to do online. Yeah. But I would say that for a lot of us, definitely for me, creating those bonds online and then meeting up with the people and connecting in real life is extremely valuable. I have a hard time just being like at a VidCon or something and just walking around and introducing myself to people. And I just don't operate that way, or at least not well, or comparatively to other people. But in this past year of doing this podcast and getting to know so many creators, there were so many creators I didn't end up meeting at VidCon that I really wanted to, because there was just not enough time. So I'm really looking forward to going next year. And if any of you listeners are interested in going, we'll definitely be there for sure.
Favorite restaurant? Andrew and the Baby Gang wants to know your favorite restaurant.
Okay, favorite restaurant wouldn't be anything that anyone's ever heard of. I'm not a really huge fan of chain restaurants. Like Jake, for instance.
You always want to go to like some weird hole in the wall that has like -4 Yelp reviews. You're like, oh, nobody in the world likes this place. That's where I want to go.
That's not true. I don't want to go to
That's exactly true.
To terrible places. But, I also don't want to just go to Taco Bell and Chili's like Jake Roper does. God bless him.
They're fun in their own way.
I like to go to places that make fresh, unique dishes that I can't get anywhere else. So that's really what I'm into on that. What about you? Do you have some like specific place where you're like, I love Red Lobster or something like that?
I have a lot of them. I mean, I really like certain buffets in Las Vegas. Maura hates buffets, by the way. So she swallows a bitter pill every time I take her to
I do
a buffet.
too. So we relate on that.
Yeah, you're a buffet guy or you aren't. There's no in between really. But my answer on this is kind of lame, where it's more about the experience, who I'm going with, what the whole mood is like. Like when I think of the best burgers I've ever had, I think of, you remember that Peter Pan themed restaurant in Vienna?
Yes.
Yeah. So we chose this out of nowhere because it was like right in front of us and it looked cool. But it looked like a kind of regular, normal restaurant. it was really good food. I don't know why they played Peter Pan soundtracks the entire time. I don't know why Peter Pan burger is a thing, but this was like a classy place. It was
nice.
It wasn't like a fast food place. It was a nice restaurant. Maura and Kevin and I were there because Kevin was doing his TED Talk. It's funny. I don't know if that was the best tasting burger I've ever had in my life. I don't know. I really can't rank them. But when I think, oh, what's the best burger I've had? I think of that place because we had such a good time there. It was awesome. And that's how I process food. You know, there's an Italian restaurant in town called Toscana that I love because every time Maura and I go, we just have the best time ever. Is it the best Italian food? Well, it's the second best meatball I've ever had. But is it the best Italian food? I don't know. But when I think of great restaurants for me, it's such a good feeling and memory. That's how I process
it's
it.
like less clinical and more romantic almost for you. It's like an emotional connection to the experience. Yes. We're running low on time. Let's end on a good one. What do you got?
Oh, a good one. So we got pages. We've actually gotten through a lot of these. I mean, more than half.
Wow.
Yeah, I should have prepped the final question. Like this one we're saving to be the sign-off question.
Well, it's just the final question for this episode. We still are going to answer these questions at the end of every episode if you are a patron for the patrons. So if you love this style of podcast and you want to be involved moving forward, then definitely check out patreon.com/thecreateunknown because it's really what we do over there.
Yeah. And we love the questions and to talk about the things. And sometimes we go really deep into something that you didn't think that you would, like the meatball thing. Jeff Davis asked about food like that. And I think he asked specifically about meatballs because we were talking Italian food a couple weeks back. And that turned into like a 7-minute thing really about like how processing the food world works. And you'd never think that something like that would turn into a real answer. And it's a lot of fun to have some of those. And you had a really long explanation, which was super revealing. I just sat back and listened to you talk about music and why certain bands mattered, the way that they mattered, just how it all worked. And that was so revealing and awesome and good. And that's the kind of thing that we throw in with the after shows. Yeah,
there have been moments of the after show where I'm like, this is better than the regular show. Like some of the questions pull out discussions that are hard sometimes for us to do on our own. And that's what I love about them.
Yep. So I think I've got one that I like for this. Okay. Captain Cool, who is a daily staple in Discord. That's KU with an umlaut over it, HL. His question's a biggie. If you could go back to the age of 18 and start your career over, would you? And would you do anything differently, change anything? Hardest part about what you do and the most rewarding. So there's a lot in there, but let's start with, if you could go back to 18, how would things be different?
Well, YouTube didn't exist when I was 18, so it was impossible for me to do YouTube when I was 18 because it was years away from being invented. But to answer the question as best as I can, I wish that I had an understanding of my love of working in creative fields sooner. It took me a really long time to figure that out. And it was almost a weird situation where people who knew me, like teachers and family members, knew it about me, but I didn't understand it. It really wasn't until like I went through college, after like a few years in college, really, that I understood that about myself. And I feel like I wouldn't have been as far behind in life if I had just figured that out sooner.
I I was doing radically different stuff back in that day. I was on track to do a PhD in politics, political science related things. It's just night and day different from what I ended up doing, where I eventually shifted to writing and editing or whatever. I'm really torn on this stuff, and I don't know how to think about any of it because, I also think of it in terms of relationships where obviously I'd want to avoid the bad ones and the things that ruined my life for years. But at the same time, if I hadn't gone through those things, I would not be who I am now. And if I'm not who I am now, Maura and I have talked about this a lot, where we've had some terrible things in the past. If they hadn't happened, we never would have been together. So how do you know? How do you know if doing something differently would play out successfully? If it would, what you'd even change to get to a better spot? I have no idea at all. Absolutely none. I don't think I would do anything differently. And the hardest part about what we do, even that changes. The things that were hard to me 3 years ago are not hard now, and new things are difficult. What's the really difficult thing for you?
Titles and thumbnails.
Yeah.
The titles and thumbnails are like the bane of my existence. Mm-hmm. And I definitely want to do an entire episode talking about that at some point, because I don't know if people understand what a struggle it is and how important it is to nail the title and the thumbnail on a YouTube video, at least for me. And in my experience, we talked about it a little bit with Derek Veritasium, but that's the hardest thing for me. And like I said, I'd love to talk about it like in depth in an episode. So I don't want to go off the rails on it too much, but yeah, I struggle with that a lot.
The hardest thing for me is time and energy. And we've alluded to this in the past too, that, like I'm not in shape the way I was 5 years ago because I don't have the time and energy to, like make dedicated, time for certain activities. That's a really hard thing. Like the actual hardest part about what the combination of stuff that I do now isn't in the actual stuff. It's not in the actual work. It's in fitting other things that I want to do in life with all of that stuff. It's brutally difficult. We talk about these trips. I spent 5 hours last night and I was up very late because I had to, book a trip to Las Vegas. Because I'm leaving from Las Vegas to go to New Zealand. And the way this works is there are constant trade-offs. Like, do I go to Albany or Syracuse, which is 90 minutes away, and pay more for a flight for the convenience of only driving 90 minutes to the airport? Or do I drive 3.5 hours to 4 hours if I stop and go to the bathroom to fly out of Newark, where Newark is a direct flight and like $200 cheaper on that flight? But then when I come home and I'm tired after this whole trip, I've got to have a longer drive home than before. Do I go on the shorter route and then like pay somebody to pick me up and drop me off so I don't have to pay for parking? It's really nuts. Like all of the way like these things fit into actual life. It's really tough, and it's getting, it gets harder. And there's this point where you're maxed out on what you can do, but you don't quite have the resources to say like, hire a personal assistant who can handle everything for you. I'm not there yet. So things are ramping up. I have much more to do on a tighter schedule, and it's more difficult, but I don't have the resources to make it easier for myself quite yet. That's the brutal stuff. The actual work, man, we have a ball. Like, don't we honestly have a pretty good life? Like, most days are pretty good, man. Like, we talk about interesting stuff most of the time. There's a lot of hard stuff, and it's a slog and whatever with making videos. But like the difficulties for me, at least, they're having to do with the career's impact on your life more so than the actual career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. It is hard to do everything.
As we sign off, most rewarding part of it. That was the last part of Captain Cool's question.
This is going to sound cheesy, but it's when people are happy with the video, when people are really, and it doesn't have to mean like it gets a lot of views. It could just be like a comment. Like, man, there was some comment that I saw. I showed it to you. I think it was last week or something. I think it was on the Dot Game video where someone was like, I had heard about this Dot Game like when I was a teenager in class or something, and I never really understood it. But like now after watching your video, like I get it finally, and I'm really excited about it. And he was basically like, I just want you to know like how much I appreciate kind of your enthusiasm behind this stuff and helping me understand it in a way that gets me excited about it again. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's intense for me in a really good way, in a really hopeful and positive way to hear from people saying, what you have done has affected my life for the better. That's I can't ask for more than that.
No, and mine is straight up watch time. I'm still, it's staggering to me when I do the math on people that I work with. We've done it with Vsauce 2 stuff where you figure out how many combined years of humanity have been dedicated to watching your videos. That I can't get over that. That when you can look and say, people have spent thousands of years combined engaging in what you do, and whether, I like it on working with you. Obviously, I like it with this podcast. I love knowing the staggering amounts of years that people have spent listening to what we've had to say and thinking about those topics. When I work on the management side, I'm not making content with those guys, but I'm doing the things that allow them to make more content. And I can look at something that gets, let's say 2 million views, and I know that the average view on it was probably 10 minutes. Well, there's 20 million minutes. That's about 40 years of time. It feels really good to know that you're doing something that helps that person create more stuff that's going to engage humanity for like 40 or 50 years. I don't think I will ever come to terms with how awesome this is. That's every time I think of it, I just think like, wow.
Yeah.
And that feeling hasn't gone away in many years. And so I think 5 years from now, I'm still going to say, wow.
It is amazing. It is amazing when you put it in that context and quantify it that way. Well, I hope, we didn't obviously get to everybody's questions. There are so many more that, we'll continue to answer for our patrons. If you want to continue to ask and hear our answers to questions like this, just go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown, where we do this at the end of every episode. And we also have our live stream where we can interact with you directly. And for everybody else, thank you so much for being involved, for asking the questions in the community post and on Twitter and everything. Like I said, we love hearing from you, and we love the questions that you give us because it does force us to think about things where we haven't been thinking about for the last week or the last few months. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well now I kind of have to handle this and I'm not sure quite how to. So it's really fun for us.
We got to about 30 questions.
Wow.
That's pretty good. Yeah. It wasn't all of them. We'll hit some of the others in future episodes, but I'm pumped that we got through as many as we got through. So thank you for asking these on the various platforms, YouTube, Discord, Twitter, all of that. One of the questions, I forget who asked, was, do we have any pets? Yeah, I have Piglet. He just crashed the set for the 80th time. So it was awesome. I really am looking forward to doing this in a full dedicated episode again. I hope that we can have another one of these in the future. But in the meantime, we're doing it on the after shows and throwing these into every episode for the patrons. So whether you're a patron or not, like Kevin said, thank you for showing up and saying hey to us, talking to us about crazy things and serious things and everything in between. It's been a remarkable year that has absolutely changed my life. I'm really glad that we did the whole thing and that the community has built around it the way that it has.
For sure, for sure. So thank you again. You like our brains. Well, guess what? We like your brains too. We'll see you next week. Until next time, see you, Space Cowboys.